Welcome to For the Love of Books, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries. Hi everyone, welcome back to the North Lanarkshire Libraries podcast For the Love of Books. My name is Chris Wilson and today we are joined by a couple of special guests who are Kirsten Scott from Braidhurst High School and Anna Leslie from Taylor High School, and they are the Library Resource Centre Managers, or usually more lovingly known as School Librarians. And I thought I'd ask them to come along because I thought we'd have a wee chat about sort of young adult fiction and what's popular with teens and any kind of tips and hints of how to get some teens reading and things like that sort of stuff. So welcome to the podcast, guys. Thank you for joining. It's been great to kind of get you along, and thank you for being willing victims on the podcast.
Anytime.
Fantastic. So we'll get kicked off, and we'll start a little bit about your actual roles as school librarians. Let's kick off and find out a little bit more about that role. What's the key aspects for you guys for that role? So Kirsten, what do you think is the kind of main key parts for your role as a school librarian?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just every school librarian works differently because every school's different. So what I say might not be very similar to Anna at all. Mm-hmm. It's all quite specific to your kind of school population and to the staff that you work with and for. But for me at Braidhurst, I primarily focus on reader development. So I've worked here for 13 years, and over that time, I've kind of built relationships with our English staff and our English PT, and we've really kind of focused on reader development and trying to encourage young people to read for pleasure. And, you know, we've developed various programs and initiatives, and we've had events and everything. And our latest attempt kind of ties in, and we've spoken about this before, Chris, with the reading schools, Scottish Book Trust reading schools. Yeah. So that's what my main focus is. But it's just really about building relationships as a school librarian with your pupils. We're not teachers, so our relationship is slightly more flexible and friendlier, maybe. Mm-hmm. And with your staff, because it takes time in any job, doesn't it, to for people to understand where you're coming from and to be maybe willing and open to what you're trying to do. So that takes a lot of time and effort, of course. So I try and put a lot of my energy into working with staff. And then lastly, some information literacy. Classes are always doing research for their certificated courses, but obviously before that as well. So facilitating their learning of how to use sources, either digital or physical. So it's a really varied job, and I'm sure that Anna could speak to that, is that you don't do the same things every day. Yeah.
Anna, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, mine is less, what do we say, Kirsten has put it very, very articulately and reader development, but I just try and you're laughing, but yeah, I'm thinking, oh God, goodness, I didn't put that word, but that's really what I'm just about to talk about. So really what my main aim at Taylor High School is just to make the library as vibrant as it possibly can be. Right, so I do this in various ways, right? So I do this with and this is where reader development comes in. Thank you, Kirsten, for going first.
You're welcome.
So I have reading to inspire inserts with S1 and PSHE, and they run for the whole year. And it's different things that I do there. And I do an S1 Roald Dahl annual festival, and different departments are involved. It's not like an English thing. It's like they do a maths puzzle, they look at illustration, and they look at quizzes. It's kind of all different things, and that's a really good one for when the primary sevens are coming, when they're the new first years, And then I also have started to do the Royal Society Book Prize with science, which I really, 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 really like doing. I'm determined to win the prize for the video, so I need to make my video better this year. I thought I had done really well last year. But never say la vie. Was we say, but another thing that I would say is that during COVID-19, I would definitely say that my role, I had to really adapt, as we all did. Like we all had to adapt. So during like COVID-19, I was using Twitter a lot as a way to connect with both staff, departments, and parents actually, and pupils. To promote all the books that I was reading during, because this is the first time that I could actually stop, like, right, what do I want to read? Oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to read this, this. You know, I've got 2 kids. I don't really have a whole, I mean, you know, I don't have a whole lot of time. What is we say? And I usually get to,
I do feel your pain on that.
I usually get to about 2 pages in my eye. I'm like, oh, you know, like, so yeah, so lockdown really gave me an opportunity to actually read. So I was just promoting what I was reading on using Adobe Spark and Twitter. It helps you create posters. They're like arty posters for the non-technical people. That's me, so it's me fine. What do we say? And then I also collaborated with the principal teacher of home economics. Well, I'll actually get a row for saying home economics. It's actually he's the principal. He's the faculty head of health and well-being. So that's both home economics and PE. Was we say, and we created a lockdown cookbook. Because I don't know about you guys. Again, I was in the house all the time. I was doing loads of like cooking, and I was doing some baking. I don't like baking, but I did it because I had to. Was we say, so I did lots of baking. I just thought, well, if I'm doing this and other people in the same position, what are they doing? And I love talking about food. So and finding what people are doing. So I did a lockdown cookbook, and I also recorded stuff for World Book Day using YouTube. Like I recorded a reading of the Fable Beast Chronicles, First Aid for Fairies. I did that as well. I've got to say, that was really nerve-wracking. It was like a 9-minute recording, and it took me about 3 hours because I'm such a perfectionist. But it was good. So what I've been doing recently, because my library's small, is that I've actually just been going out and I've only got 2 wee windows, so it's not very good for, like, you know, air circulation. Just started to go to classes and taking the library to classes, and can I just tell you, I've been loving it. I've been loving it.
It's fabulous. I must say, I follow Anna on Twitter, and everything she does is just so good. I mean, most of us use Twitter to promote, you know, what we're doing in our libraries, because we don't often get the chance to kind of work as a team, even though we are a team officially. So it's really nice to like follow everybody and always to like see what everybody's doing. And everything that Anna does is always fabulous, always kind of liking it and stuff. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I do remember the cookbook and things when you were doing that as well. That was a fantastic idea, and it was great to see when you mentioned that on Twitter and things.
See, I'm all about trying to prove to people. See, this is me. I'm always trying to prove to people that libraries are just like all the things, all these creative things that you can actually do. All my ideas come from a book. It's not like it's not like you're talking about like I don't think I could actually lead a class in anything else, because everything I do basically revolves around books.
Yeah.
You know, that is my thing, and I really, really love it, because I didn't actually realise. I didn't really fully appreciate just how much you could actually really get out of books. It's not just about reading. So I'm all about proving that the library is just, because people are something, you did that, and you're like, yes, because that's what librarians do. I mean, Kirsten, you know, you'll be the same. You're always thinking outside the box.
You have to.
And that's what I love. I like thinking outside the box to improve reader development. There you go, Kirsten.
Today's buzzword, reader development. There we go.
Fantastic. It's actually just great to hear the two of you being so passionate about libraries as well, because obviously as a librarian myself, I have the same kind of feeling about how passionate the library should be, and it's great to hear you guys in a different kind of role, kind of just as equally as passionate about your kind of sector as what is ours. So we'll move on a little bit. So obviously, from your position as high school librarians, you'll be quite well placed to see what's popular with teens at the moment in terms of reading and things like that. So what are the kids really desperate to read at the moment, Kirsten, in your library?
To be honest with you, in general, the kind of main genres are still popular. So fantasy is still really popular, adventure stories, war history stories. We're a school of football as well, so we have a cohort of footballers that come from across the authority and sometimes outside the authority to come to this school because of a football programme, either delivered by the SFE or Motherwell Football Club. So sport biographies are always huge at Braidhurst as well. So once again, the books that are available in each school library are completely different because you have to cater to the what your kids want to read. So I'll probably have a lot more sport books in Braidhurst than perhaps Anna does, just because of the difference in the school populations. So that in general those are still popular, but it's still Harry Potter specifically. Kids still love Harry Potter. I mean, they really, really do. They still love Twilight and Percy Jackson and The Hunger Games and The Enemy by Charlie Higson.
Do you know? See, I feel like we've not even like had this conversation, and I'm like, yes. So, one that I agree with is Twilight. Not so much Twilight here. I've got a big manga following of I mean, from like first to fourth year. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, they're just
Me too.
They cannot get enough of it. You're just like, have to like make another stand because they're just fed up with the ones that I've got. So I would say the manga is really popular. I would say, and this is the other thing, I'm going to go on about this book a lot, so I apologize. So whenever I get a chance and whenever I pass, this is how I actually communicate with my my regulars that I don't really see so much anymore. It's like they pass me in the corridor and they must be like, oh no, Mrs. Leslie's coming. Oh no, when we see, but I'm like, I read this, but I think you'd be perfect for it. I'll leave it at the library desk for you, or I'll draw it. Would it be horrifying if I dropped it in for you, and I'll try and not make a big deal about it. So the book that I've really been promoting is The Extinction Trials. It's a book series by S.M. Wilson. Honestly, whenever there are so many pupils that I think that's perfect for you. That's perfect for you. You love this. You don't like reading. You'll love this. You'll love this. So so I've been promoting the Extinction Trials massively since I came back from lockdown. But I would say anything kind of dystopian is what really which really sells, and that's where I'm coming into what Chris was saying about see The Enemy and like the Charlie Higg, that whole like series of books, the Gone series by Michael Grant. I'm trying to think if there's something else, but Hunger Games, anything that's about anything that's kind of
things.
Just anything about society just breaking down and being like the Hunger Games, basically. Anything that they love things like that. So I would say that's that's manga and things about the world being destroyed. That seems to cheer them.
And the thing that seems to have been quite popular for quite a long time now as well in that kind of genre, which is really interesting because normally I've always felt that these genres tend to go through wee cycles and change, but dystopian fiction really has kind of stuck there for quite a while now, which is quite interesting. And Anna, you have mentioned that Extinction Trials to me before, and I did look up and I remember seeing that it basically said it was Jurassic Park mixed with the Hunger Games, and if that doesn't sound like a fantastic book, I don't know what does. I mean,
but you know the thing is that I've got a confession, mate. I've never read the Hunger Games because I've never had because it's so pop. See, I read what I want to read. And what I'm like, you've got to, and that's the thing. So I read what I want to read, but see, as soon as I read something, I think, oh, that suits such and such. So I read. It wasn't a young fiction book. It was an easy. I was looking through my easy reads, and they're a bit kind of like. They were just looking a bit depressed, and I thought, right, I've got to change this up. You're never going to get people into reading. So I started reading this American series called Classic Starts, and I read. But what I would say, in its defence, it is American. So all the spellings are American and things like that. However, it's really, see, if you're not a reader, you know, that way it's one of those books you can read the classic without having to have dictionary beside it, or the language isn't too old fashioned. So I actually read Anne of Green Gables and what's the other one? Around the World in 80 Days. Around in the World in 80 Days. And see, as soon as I read that, I knew exactly. I knew exactly who I was going to recommend that to, because the character just reminded me of this pupil, and I just thought, that's it. This is for you.
You're bursting the bubble, Anna. Don't burst the bubble, because kids often, one of the first things they ask school librarians when they come into the library is, have you read all these books, miss? You need to always say, yes. I have. I've read all of them, every single one.
You know, I see, when they ask me that question, Kirsten, I usually say, how much time do you think I've got?
I know, I'm joking. I answer honestly as well. I say, of course I haven't.
And if you have read all the books in the libraries, that means you must have some very good tips to pass on to parents as to how to get teens to read some books. So, do you have any interesting tips for parents who might be trying to encourage their teens to enjoy reading more? Kirsten, have you got any?
I just had some thoughts. Well, I think about this a lot as a mother as well, not of teenagers, but of two young girls, and working with young people on a daily basis. And many of them throughout the years have said, you know, I hate reading, I don't like reading, it's a waste of time. And I'm very thick-skinned, it never affects me really. So I've given this kind of topic a lot of thought, and I think for me the number one kind of tactic would be persistence. It's like exercising. I often compare, you know, reading for pleasure, getting into reading for pleasure, kind of like the kind of Couch to 5K program. And if you just persevere and take it step by step, and you don't try anything too chunky, anything too long to begin with, then you build it up, and before you know it, you'll actually have finished a book that you enjoyed. And doing that regularly and persistently, it changes your attitude to it. Some of us are born readers. I would take a guess here and say that us three, we're born readers, but some folk obviously aren't and come to it later in life, and sometimes never come to it. But if a parent's wondering why my kid won't read, then just be persistent and step by step do it. You know, give them a book and keep them going with it, and ask them about it. You know, what did you like about it? What didn't like about it? Read together is a huge thing as well. But don't think that they're going to be reading classics straight away. I mean, even readers don't often read classics. That's kind of like more of a niche nowadays. So I think also role modelling. If you don't read yourself, then your child is way less likely to read. You might think, oh, we're at high school now, we're doing our National 5 English or National 5 History or whatever it is, and the teachers at parents' night or in the report card just saying, you know, so-and-so should read more. But if you don't read yourself at home, and there's no books at home, and you're not surrounding your young person or young people with books, then you're not role modelling that positive behaviour. Whereas if you're reading, and as parents, you know, we'll read a lot to our kids and there'll be books at home, it's way easier. So exposure to books as well, just having them at home, taking them to the library. I mean, I still take my girls to the library and make sure that any Christmas and birthday books are always featured in their present list and are valued just as highly as a toy or a game or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's various things you can do, but I think the main thing is to be realistic, and know that they're not going to start loving reading straight away. So you need to be persistent and take it step by step, and maybe do it yourself as well.
Yeah. Anna, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Well, really all I would say is for parents, I would just say just be encouraging. You will get some parents that do like reading, and there are books in the house, and that's great. And see if that is the case with that type of parent. I would just say talk to your children about reading. Does your child like reading fact, or did he like reading things that are made up? Talk about authors and things like that. Even if you're talking about like old-fashioned authors and things like that, because at least you're giving them, like, they could just be like, oh, I was thinking about all the books that I used to read. I used to get all my hand-me-downs from my sister, so we're talking like Nancy Drew and things like that. So it's like, if you mentioned that, they would just like, what? So it's just about having, a discussion. And that's what I would say to parents, having a discussion. For parents that don't like reading and that aren't readers, that's what I would say the school library services for. That's what we're here to do. I love when kids come up and tell me that they don't like reading, because then I spend the rest of my time trying to prove them why they were wrong. And if you try this, so I get that quite a lot. And there's people like recently, and he was like, I don't like reading. I mean, Christian, you get it quite a lot. You don't like reading. But what I would say is, so if you've got parents that like reading, get them to talk to them about reading and talk to them about authors and things like that. But for the parents who don't, and who don't have the money, well, that's what the library's for. That's what we're here for. We're here to support. Don't get me wrong. We're here to support everybody. So we're more than happy to talk to children who actually, who want to read and things like that. I'm more than happy to do that. But equally, I'm more than happy to help encourage children who maybe don't have access to books, whether that be because it's just not something that's done in the house, or whether they don't have the money. I don't really mind. See, to me, any library service, particularly a school library service, and I think you'll probably agree with me here, Kirsten. Was we say it's about being equitable. It's about giving people access, giving everybody equal access to books. And that's what a school library can do. A school library is this dedicated place within the school. We don't have to go very far, and there it is right there. And there's the qualified librarian. They can tell you, this is good, this is good. If you don't like reading, I'd maybe give this one a miss, because the last thing you want to do is give a pupil a book and it's wordy, and it's like one of those ones they're going to have to, keep on looking at the dictionary all the time. That's never going to get them interested in reading ever. What do we say? I mean, it puts me off. I mean, actually in the house, when I read books, I often read them beside my husband, because he's like a walking dictionary. I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? So it's like again, it comes back to what Kirsten, what you were saying. It's about, it's about reading together. It's like, it's actually. And this is what I found from when we're having discussion when I was doing fabulous fiction with the first years. They seem to think it's this solitary act, but it doesn't have to be. It definitely doesn't have to be. And I suppose, Chris, you would say the same with your book clubs.
Yeah.
You've been doing like book bugs been going on, like you've been reading like stories and things like that.
Yeah.
I would just say, like, why not? That makes reading equitable to all readers. But the thing is that's what I'm saying. Like, see, when we were stuck, or during lockdown, and I started to read, there is nothing, as long as you ask the publisher's permission and obviously the author's permission, there is nothing stopping you reading an extract from a teenage book and putting it out there for your pupils. There's absolutely nothing holding you back.
Yeah.
Well, 100% agree, man. Just very quickly, that's one of the any school library worth its salt, if they're trying to persuade and convince and encourage young people to read, it has to be a level playing field regardless of background, regardless of reading ability, and regardless of how often they read. There has to, if a school librarian is working with you, it's from a place of no judgment, and it's of a place of positive support, and that's how we both approach our jobs. And so perhaps, you know, that's maybe an idea for parents. Just positive support, no judgment, keep the kids going, and step by step they'll get there.
The other thing that just quickly that I didn't actually say is that I would get parents to ask their kids, well, find out about your kids. What are their hobbies? What do they like? What do they not like? What do they watch? It's quite a lot when I get kids coming out of the library. I'm like, what's your favourite film? That's how I always start off, because then I can kind of have a rough idea of, you know, what they like. Although, I mean, not always. I mean, it's not like a given. But if you can, a lot of them are starting to say, I don't watch films. So yeah, you say you turn to what do you watch on YouTube, and you know you get these things. So it's like, oh, I watch Minecraft videos. That's quite popular in my household. So we've got lots of Minecraft books and things like that. So, you know, it's just honestly, again, it's like I feel like I'm kind of talking about the things that Kirsten's already been talking about, and it's just being open and having a conversation. It's just open and having a conversation, and no judgment. Yeah.
Fantastic. What we'll do now is I think we'll focus a little bit more on more books specifically. Trying to split that word out. I was thinking I was a big fan of YA fiction in the past. Whenever Twilight and The Hunger Games and Divergent and things like that were huge hits. Kirsten, are those still kind of big hits for kids, would you say? I know you were touching on it a little bit earlier, saying that like Harry Potter and things like that are still quite popular. Are these ones still quite big hits for kids?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. My Twilight books get lost every year, and I have to buy new Twilight books, so that speaks for itself. But these films are still being streamed. They're still very much part of popular culture. But there's always new titles as well. So the great thing about young adult fiction is that not most of them, but a lot of them are adapted into TV or films.
Yeah.
And so you think of like your most popular films and TV shows that are targeting this age group, and it's always young adult fiction, fantasy, dystopian stories. So they'll always be popular, and the ones that came out first kind of 10, 15 years ago, they're still really popular as well. But there's always new titles as well, so it's always evolving, but there's still room for the OGs, the originals. Certainly in Braidhurst, they're still popular.
I remember actually finding out about the Hunger Games on a website. I don't think it's actually there anymore, or it was bought over. It was on Shelfari at the time, and it was when it was getting really quite popular in America. And myself and one of my colleagues, Hilary Petrie, kind of found out about it around about the same time. And I like to make a bit of a claim to fame of thinking that I was a bit ahead of the curve when it came to the Hunger Games and read it before most people did. And then, like, a bit like you, Anna, with the Extinction Trials, like I championed it with everybody that I spoke to and read it to, and then it became this massive thing and a big hit movie and things like that sort of stuff. And it was one of those one of those books that really kind of caught my eye and really kind of dragged you in as a reader, and I thought it was really good. But you guys must be must enjoy YA fiction quite a lot, as well as being school librarians. What's really been catching your eye at the moment, Anna, in terms of that? Is there any top recommendations?
I've been waiting for this. This is like my favourite question. I've been waiting for this question the whole time. Other ones I'm just like, right, okay. So I actually wrote them down in my top picks.
Okay.
My top picks. I've got, again, I'm sorry we've been talking about it loads, but it's on the top list. The Extinction Trials by S.M. Wilson. But I like this other one called Big Bones by Laura Doctrill. It's amazing. It's so good. What do we say? Basically, the chapters are like, it's like the chapter begins. Chapter 1, noodles, cakes, fairy cake. Then it's like, you know, and it goes whatever. She loves food, and obviously big bones. She's got to, she loves food. It's not like it's all like junk food she's eating. It's like nice. I mean, I was like, oh, I wonder what she's eating today. What do you say? So it's like, yeah, so she just loves food, but she's got to be careful because she's got asthma. She's got to, but it's quite serious. It's not just like, you know, a couple of wee puffs and the inhaler kind of thing. It's like serious. And she's desperate. She hates school. She's desperate to leave school. And she works in a coffee shop and she wants to go and work there full time, but her mum is like, no, you're not going to work there, you're going to finish school. And so it's interesting. It's just a bit, the other things happen and it's just that journey, but I just loved opening up the chapter to see what she was like a proper cook and she was like making stuff. So I was in my element because I was like, oh, this chapter's called noodles. I wonder what she's making with it, kind of thing. So it was like, yeah, so it was really, really good. So if you love love food, what do we say? And you know, you want that part of the conversation, it's definitely the book. But there are don't get me wrong, there are other themes. I mean, I feel like I'm not doing Laura Doctrill, like, you know, she'd be like, and it's more about this and it's about this. I just really liked that it was about food. But then I'm reading it from an adult.
Yeah.
Then the other one that I read, and oh, what do we say? I feel embarrassed to admit this one, but
Go on.
To All the Boys I Loved by Jenny Han.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. And it's done really like from a parent's point of view, it's done really responsibly. But I love excuse me, I love the character between Lara Jean and Peter. I think they might be one of my favourite romantic couples ever because
wow.
it takes you back to a time you just think, oh, that's so sweet. So yeah, the romantic in me loves To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. The next one I'm going to tell you about, and I'm reading it just now, it's going to take me forever to read it, but it's really, really good. It's called Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetis. She is a Carnegie winner. What do we say? But this is a new one, The Fountains of Silence, and I went to an event during lockdown where she was talking about books, and man, oh man, I mean, see, when she was talking about it, you could tell that she had researched it really well. But see, when you read it, you're like, and I did history at university, so this is like totally up my street, but it's like so impressive. Honestly, it's so impressive. You're just like, this is so well researched. This is so well researched. So that one, 5. Sorry, I will be stopping in a minute. By Lizzie. Now, my mum was a modern languages teacher, and she was here. She'd be scolding me for how I'm about to pronounce this Spanish name. Velasquez. I think that's Lizzie Velasquez. Okay, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'll spell it. It's Velasquez. What do we say? Velasquez. So this book is basically autobiographical, and it's about this girl who discovers that she has a rare disease, and I had it written down, and now I can't find it. And so, but anyway, she got a genetic, and it affects her facial features, and it affects her body. And she discovered when she was a teenager that somebody had put her on a video called The World's Ugliest Woman, and she decided to take a stand. And she's a motivational speaker now, and she does a follower. So basically, it's all about when she found this video, and how it went from there. But it's amazing. Dare to be kind. It's about being kind to yourself. It's about being kind to others, and it's about being kind to the bully. it's being kind to people that are mean, and that's the hard bit. And you have to keep on. You have to really read it. It's so inspirational for teens. I mean, it's for adults too, but it's so inspirational for teens. So inspirational. Right, that's me. I'm done. I
Sounds
promise.
really interesting.
I've
Kirsten,
written those down. They sound fantastic, Anna.
have you got anything to add to that, Kirsten?
I'll be super quick, promise. Shadow and Bone by Lee, I'm terrible at pronouncing surnames, Bardugo. It's on Netflix at the moment, but it started out obviously as young adult fiction, and it's a fantasy story, magic, love story, adventure, etc. It's a trilogy, and it's really great. It's a fantastic read, and as I said, they've adapted it into a TV series for Netflix, which was a huge hit earlier this year, I think. I'm reading this series by Julie. Once again, I'm going to mispronounce her second name, Bertagna. Sorry. And it's I don't think it's a trilogy of novels, but I don't think it has a series name, so I'm just going to call it the Exodus series. But she's a Scottish writer. The stories are set in Scotland, or begin in Scotland, I should say. And even though it was published 20 years ago, it's about really topical themes. It's basically about post-climate crisis. The world is literally drowning, and it deals with obviously the fallout of that in terms of, refugees and what happens with a society where some folk can escape the climate crisis and other folk are having to suffer it, and what kind of future you would have. So it's a really great read. And also the Philip Pullman's The Book of Dust trilogy, which is 2 books in, La Belle Sauvage and The Secret Commonwealth. I didn't really enjoy them as much as I enjoyed the first trilogy, His Dark Materials, but they are still a really great read, and Pullman's a super storyteller, so I would recommend that as well.
Fantastic. Now, let's try and delve a little bit into our own past a little bit. Imagine we're back in high school, and what was our favourite reads whenever we were back in high school? So, Anna, what was your favourite reads? Do you have any that really fostered the love of reading in you, or is there any you're a little bit ashamed to admit to now that you're a bit older?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm of the books that I'm about to suggest. Generally are of my generation, so I'm sure everybody here, not that I'm trying to say that everybody's the same age as me, but I'm sure everybody will appreciate what I'm about to say. But no, what book really fostered my love of reading is actually, it might surprise you actually, it's Anne Frank's diary.
Wow.
I was addicted. That was my first book that I actually stayed up late to read. Like, I was just totally, I would not put it down. I loved it. I go on about it all. I've been talking about it all the time. Like, whoever will listen to me, like, the whole while. Yeah. So that was my favourite. And I read lots of other books around it as well. I just was fascinated. I just couldn't understand how something like that could happen. And I loved how human Anne was. Like, she was just, like that kind of, she wasn't, she was just human, she was just very human. They were living in this really tight space, and she's like, oh, this person's really annoying, as you would. And but I remember thinking at the time, like, wow, this is just, this girl could be, I could be this girl, I really, this could be me, because I had a sister and everything like that, so an older sister, and I'm thinking, that could be me. So I was totally, that was the book that I fell in love with. The other books are not so classy. I don't really remember there being. See, when I was young, I don't know about you, Kirsten, I don't really remember anybody saying this is junior fiction and this is adult fiction.
No.
I just was handed down books from my sister. That's I mean, so it wasn't really, and then the ones that my mum bought me, I was just like, well, I don't want to read them, but I think it was kind of cool because, you know, my sister had read them, so I'm going to admit it, yes. And it's not, and these, I think these are technically classed as junior fiction, but I mean, I did read them as a teenager. Nancy Drew, there was one I can't remember, but it stands out even now. It stands out in my mind, and they go to Venice, and it's all about the mystery and like the glass, and it's to do with glass. And and that stays in my mind. And it's actually, it's even now as an adult, I'm like, I really want to go to Venice because Nancy Drew is in Venice.
Brilliant.
Kirsten, what about you? What have you got for your past?
I've got 3 books I'll talk about quickly. The book that made me a reader, I read at primary school, so not when I was at secondary, but it was The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. And I'm a fantasy fan. I love fantasy literature. So that was the first book like Hannah that I literally stayed up all night and couldn't put it down, and would read some of those books in that series in a day, and was just obsessed with it. And so that was the book that made me a reader. But that was at primary school, not at secondary school. But at secondary school, what I read that stays with me, well, I'll go with the classy one, as Anna calls it, The Lord of the Rings. Fell in love with The Lord of the Rings when I think I was maybe in second year, and it's part of my personality now. The Lord of the Rings, it means that much to me. It's if you know me, you know that I love Lord of the Rings. And the one, I guess, like a guilty read, a guilty pleasure, but I did really enjoy them, were the Sweet Valley High books by Francine Pascal. I love
that too, but then I thought maybe I no, in the junior fiction section in our library, so I didn't want to mention them, but yes, I read them too.
I mean, when I actually attended the school that I work in, and we weren't weirdly encouraged or given access to borrow books from the school library. So these were books that I either borrowed from the public library or were gifted from like my parents or whoever. But yeah, I absolutely loved Sweet Valley High. It was pure trash escapism, but it was great if you were a teenage girl wishing you were a teenage girl in Motherwell, wishing you were a teenage girl in California.
Yeah. But you have been a blonde hair, but I had the wish of wanting blonde hair.
I'm brown now, but I was a blonde at some point.
But I think from high school, from my point, I remember my friends that were kind of readers were split into 2 camps a little bit. It was you were either a Harry Potter fan or a Lord of the Rings fan,
yeah.
and the two didn't usually merge too well. And I initially was on the Lord of the Rings side of the things, but one of my friends convinced me to read one of the Harry Potter books, and I thought to myself, I don't think this is going to be anywhere near as good as Lord of the Rings. It can't possibly. But I was like totally hooked by Harry Potter, and then I'm now a huge Harry Potter fan too. So anyone who is in a similar position to me who hasn't read those books, read both, because they're both fantastic books and definitely both worth reading for sure.
Yes.
Totally different as well. Like I think at the time we were kind of lumping them together a bit because it was the time whenever the movies were coming out, and it was like the movies were the Lord of the Rings ones were maybe a bit cooler to be the fan of rather than the Harry Potter ones and things like that, but definitely worth kind of reading the two series for sure. And the great thing I love about the Harry Potter ones in particular is that they grew with the sort of audience as they went as well. It was very well written, I think, by J.K. Rowling in that respect, because the first ones are very sort of aimed at kids, but as obviously that readership grows and gets older, like they do get very, very darker and as it goes on. So it's very well done.
Sure. I agree with you. Because the ones at the beginning are not the same as the ones towards the end. Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that. Yeah, you're right, and actually to do that as a reader, to grow with your reader, I mean that's saying something.
Yeah. And finally, I'll end my last question by asking us to step away from young adult for a wee minute and just ask, have you got any sort of favourite reads recently that isn't from that genre? So any kind of adult book or any junior fiction book, if you want to go that direction as well. Anna, have you got anything you would like to kind of throw out there as a recommendation for our readers?
Yeah, I definitely would, but I think, see, this is what annoys me because I know we're talking about adult fiction, but I always think books are for everybody. Like books are for everybody. Like it doesn't matter. Like I like to call I hate calling junior fiction junior fiction. I like to call them universal.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because it's so true because everybody can read them, and I think you're missing. See, if you do not read junior fiction, you are missing out. You're totally missing out. And the one that I'm going to suggest, and I will always suggest because it's now become my favourite, is the One series by Maurice Gleitzman.
Yeah.
And it follows a wee Polish boy whose parents put him into an orphanage to save him from the Nazis. But then the Nazis come to the orphanage, and then it's all about his journey. And then he meets another wee girl called Zelda, who you find out who there was a burning building, but her parents were Nazis. But these two unite, and it's the books. You know, they start off once, after, then, now. They all start like that. At the beginning of the chapter, it's just so good. Please, if you read once, have a box of tissues ready at the end.
Fantastic. Kirsten, what would you throw out there as a suggestion?
Well, I've been reading for the past year and a half a fantasy series called The Wheel of Time. I don't know if you're familiar with The Wheel of Time, but it's high fantasy. It's pure fantasy, so unless you like fantasy, it's probably not going to be your thing, but it's incredibly famous fantasy series, and they are actually making it into a TV series which debuts on Amazon next month, so I thought it was quite timely. It is 14 books, that's why it's taken me a year and a half to kind of get through it, and I think I'm on book 11. I've just finished book 11, and they all are quite chunky, but they are pure fantasy, so I would highly recommend that. And about 5 years ago, I did a really silly thing where I downloaded a list online of the 100 kind of books you should read, you know, like a bucket list, and so a lot of them were classics, and some I'd read, but some I hadn't. And some of the classics, I'm going to be frank, I did not really like. But a couple of them I loved. And one that I loved the most is The Count of Monte Cristo, which blew me away. It is a long book. Most of them are, but it's so good. It's philosophical, it's spiritual, it's an adventure, it's a revenge story. It's awesome.
What we think, you're only the second person in my I don't know, like nearly 15 years, 20 years, or not quite 20 years yet, in libraries that's ever said that. The only one other person that's told me about the Count of Monte Cristo was a math teacher years ago when I was in the standard.
It is so good.
It's really interesting that you say that. But see, if we're talking about classics, I have a few. I love Jane Eyre. That's like the favourite.
Yeah.
I love do you feel so, it's just Mr. Rochester, he's just such a wounded soul. And you just kind of save each other, and I love that. But I also loved it as a teenager, and I remember I really liked it in first year because I'm of the generation that Colin Firth was playing Mr. Darcy in the TV.
Pride and Prejudice, yeah.
I was obsessed. So I actually read that quite, you know, like early on, like sort of first year, second year. So I loved Pride and Prejudice. I love Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's the other one that they're my classic favourites. Was we say, but the other one that I want to talk about just before we leave, and I haven't read it yet. It's kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but do you have like a pile of books on your? I'm getting there to read
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
My pile keeps on getting bigger, and I want to read the Infinity Files by S.M. Wilson, because I'm thinking if I love, I'm a wee bit nervous, but because I've just loved the Extinction Trials so much. But the Infinity Files is now in the Scottish Teenage Prize, and
All right.
I want to do that with third years, so I want to look at that. So that's really I've really got that's really got to be on my to-do list. I need to get moving.
I think that's one of the problems of being a librarian, is that to read list just gets longer and longer and longer and longer rather than shorter.
Yeah.
It's just it's a downside of the job, I think, is that you never quite get to the end of that to read pile, unfortunately. But the book I've been reading recently is The Darkness Falls by Alex Knight, who we had on the podcast for the last episode. I was halfway through it by that point, and I was really enjoying it, and it is a fantastic book. It's a kind of he's a Scottish crime writer, if you don't know who he is. He writes under Mason Cross normally, but he's got a kind of a new name to put out some standalone titles, and he's a crime writer, but he's not kind of typical Scottish crime writing. They are set in America, and this one, as we talked about in the last podcast, is set around a character called Thessaly, who has witnessed her brother's murder, and years later comes across who she thinks is the murderer in a random meeting in a diner, and sets about trying to discover if it is him, and everything happens from there. And there's a kind of twist halfway through that you can't really kind of, or a reveal that halfway through that you can't really kind of talk about without kind of ruining the story too much. But it's definitely, if anyone who listened to the last one, I have now finished the book, and it is definitely worth reading. So do kind of check that one out if you do get a chance to. But thank you very much, guys, for joining me on this podcast. It's been fantastic to hear your insight into both the kind of the school librarian job and role, and also what has been kind of popular in your schools and what kids are still looking for in reading. It's been great to kind of have you guys to kind of chat about with that. If the listeners have enjoyed this episode of our podcast, you guys can leave us feedback on the podcast by using the hashtag FLB podcast on Twitter, or by dropping us a wee email to librarypodcast@northland.gov.uk. And I'll end the podcast by just giving you a wee quick update on some library services information as well. We have recently put on a sign-up form for a newsletter on the Culture NL website, so do check that out and sign up to that if you want to receive a monthly newsletter from the library service with all the most up-to-date information about events, changes to the service and stuff like that, and keep yourself right up to date. You can do that. And also, since the last podcast as well, we have also increased the opening hours at Cleland Library, Shotts Library and New Mains Library. So we do continue to try and reopen the service as much as possible, and we are slowly but surely getting there. So we've opened up a few more libraries for longer, giving you guys more access to some of the libraries. But that's all for us for just now, guys. Thank you very much, Anna and Kirsten, for joining me. It has been great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.